Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving into something I was pondering the other day.
Okay.
You know how we always talk about, like breaking free from limitations?
Yeah.
Like we all feel a bit, I don't know, like stuck sometimes.
Right. Absolutely.
But like, what if there were no limits at all? I mean, like literally, what if the world had zero dimensions?
Whoa.
Would we even be able to understand direction, like east-west, or even our connection to something bigger than ourselves?
That is a really interesting question.
So that's what we're exploring today with Rumi. And we're lucky to have these amazing conversations from Dr. Dinani and Dr. Larijani in Marifat to guide us. Just a quick note, though. This is a translation of their talks.
Right.
So, we'll do our best to make sure the meaning comes through.
Absolutely.
But we apologize if a few things get, lost in translation.
For sure.
So Rumi uses this verse from the Quran, right? It says, "To God belongs the east and the west. Whithersoever ye turn, there is the presence of God." At first, it seems pretty simple, like God is everywhere.
Right.
But Rumi, he doesn't stop there, does he?
No, not at all. It's far more profound.
It's not just about the sun rising and setting.
Precisely. He introduces this idea of Dehliz, which basically means, well, think of it like this. The very dimensions we live in.
Okay.
They actually create this feeling of being, I don't know, like boxed in.
Yeah.
Trapped, limited, like we're in some kind of hallway or maze.
Oh, that makes sense. I totally get that. I feel like that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Especially when things get super busy. It's like the walls are closing in.
Exactly. And that's exactly what Dehliz is getting at, this sense of having a limited perspective because of all the boundaries. But then Rumi flips it all around.
Okay.
He says East and West aren't just about, physical directions. They're also about an inner reality, like the truth inside us.
So there's like an inner sunrise and sunset. Sometimes truth is bright and clear, and sometimes it fades.
That's it. You're getting it. And Rumi specifically points to the heart as our inner east. It's where truth is born, where we feel connected to something bigger.
Okay, so if the heart is the east, is the west, then like when we're lost in distraction.
Exactly. The West is all those things that cloud our vision, desires, ego, the whole 9 yards.
Like the sun setting on our clarity.
Exactly. It's harder to see the truth then.
But even when we're stumbling around in that inner west, Rumi's saying God's still there, right?
Yes. He's saying that no matter which way we turn, we're always in the presence of the divine.
It's like we can't escape it, even if we try.
Right. And to explain this, Rumi uses this amazing analogy, a circle and a point.
Okay, I'm listening.
Picture a circle. That's our universe.
Got it.
Now, in the center, there's a tiny point. That's God.
Okay.
That point, it doesn't have any dimensions, no direction. But the whole circle, the whole universe, is built around it.
Whoa. Okay, my mind is kind of blown. So like God's this invisible center point holding everything together.
That's it. It's like saying God is nowhere and everywhere all at once. And we, as part of that circle, are constantly moving around that divine center.
That's really deep.
Rumi actually captures this perfectly in a poem. He says, "The point of the compass of existence is the beloved, but love knows that in this circle, the head is spinning."
That's beautiful. But it makes me wonder, if God is this dimensionless point, how did we end up in this world of dimensions, this Dehliz place where it feels like we're constantly bumping into limitations?
That is the question, isn't it? And this is where Rumi's idea of creation becomes so important. He says, imagine starting from that point of pure potential,
Okay.
and then going on a journey into a world of boundaries and shapes.
Oh, I think I see where you're going with this. It's like a seed growing into a plant.
Right.
The seed has all this potential, but then it ends up with a stem and leaves and roots. It takes on a specific form.
Exactly. Or like a single cell becoming a whole organism.
Yeah.
With, very specific limitations built in. It's like we traded limitless potential for the experience of being in, a defined body in a world of forms.
Wow. So that's what it means to be human.
In a way, yes. We're navigating this world of boundaries, but at the same time, there's this deep longing to connect back to that limitless source.
And that word tula, in the verse, it means turning, right? It feels like there's a deeper meaning there.
You're picking up on it. Tula actually has 2 meanings. It means turning towards God, and it also means turning away from everything that isn't God.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it's like we have to choose which way to turn.
Exactly. It's not enough to just acknowledge that God's everywhere. We have to actively choose to, to face the light, to turn away from the shadows.
That's a constant effort.
It is. It's a practice. What are some of the things you find yourself turning towards in your life?
That's a great question, I think.
This whole idea of turning towards truth, it makes me think of another concept Rumi talks about a lot. It's called the Alastu Bhairabikam covenant.
Ooh, okay, now we're getting into some really deep stuff. What is that exactly?
Well, it's actually a verse from the Quran, Am I not your Lord?
It seems simple, but I bet Rumi sees a whole lot more in it than that.
Oh, absolutely. He interprets it as this promise we made way before time and space as we understand them.
Okay.
Like a promise made in that realm of pure potential, what he calls the Alama e Malakut.
Alama Emelika. So is that like a pre-birth agreement? Did we make a deal with God before we were even born?
It's more about recognizing that we're inherently connected to the divine. It's like a deep knowing inside us, a resonance with that truth of, am I not your Lord?
So it's not so much a contract, but like a remembering. Like
What?
we're carrying a piece of that promise within us, even now.
Exactly. And maybe that's why we always feel this pull towards something more, something beyond our everyday lives.
I can relate to that feeling for sure.
Yeah.
But how do we bridge that gap? I mean, how do we connect that ancient promise with, like, paying bills and dealing with traffic?
That's a really good question. Rumi uses this interesting analogy. He compares our world to a Dehliz casa.
Dehliz casa. What's that?
It means a courtroom corridor.
A courtroom. Why a courtroom?
It's about this idea of constant judgment. See, we're the Quasi-Agisa, the judges of nourishment. We're constantly deciding what we let into our hearts and minds.
Oh, I see. So it's not just about the food we eat, but also the information we consume, the relationships we have, the thoughts we dwell on.
Exactly. We decide what nourishes us, what brings us closer to that primal promise.
That's kind of a lot of pressure, isn't it? Makes you realize that even small choices can have a huge impact on our spiritual growth.
It's not just pressure, though, right? It's also empowering.
How so?
Well, Dr. Larijani emphasizes that we're not just passive bystanders in this courtroom. We're active participants, shaping our reality with each choice.
So we're not trapped, but we're actually the architects. We're constantly redesigning this courtroom with our choices.
That's a great way to put it. It reminds us that we have the power to create a reality that reflects that ancient promise, that deep knowing within us.
That's a really optimistic way to look at it, but still,
Yeah.
how do we know which choices to make? How do we judge what's truly nourishing, especially in today's world? It feels like we're bombarded with so many options, so many opinions.
That's where the connection between action and knowledge becomes crucial.
Right.
Dr. Dinani points out that our actions are really expressions of our inner understanding. He's saying it's not enough to just do the right thing. We have to understand why it's right, to connect our actions back to that deeper knowing, that primal covenant.
So it's about aligning our outer lives with our inner truth. I get that.
Huh.
But how do we even gain that understanding? Is it something we're born with, or do we have to, work at it?
And that's where Rumi emphasizes the importance of spiritual practices.
Yeah.
One of the key practices he talks about is dhikr.
Oh, I've heard of that, but I'm not sure I totally understand it. It's like a special kind of prayer, right?
It can take many forms, but the essence of dhikr is cultivating constant awareness of the divine presence.
Okay.
That can mean formal prayer or chanting, but it can also be as simple as bringing mindfulness to your everyday activities.
So it's about bringing that awareness of the last covenant, of our connection to the divine into every moment.
Exactly. Dr. Larijani emphasizes that it's not just about going through the motions, but about cultivating a state of heart-centered awareness, a deep inner connection.
That makes it feel much more accessible. So even simple things like, washing dishes or taking a walk can become a form of dhikr if I do them with that intention, with that awareness.
Absolutely. It's about infusing every aspect of your life with that remembrance, with that connection to the source.
I love that. It's like spirituality isn't separate from daily life. It's woven into everything we do.
That's the beauty of Rumi's teachings, really. He takes these profound mystical concepts and shows us how to actually live them, how to integrate them into our everyday lives.
That reminds me of something else Dr. Dinani mentioned, the concept of muhasabah. It sounds like it's about self-reflection or maybe self-accountability.
You got it. It's about both of those things. Muhasabah means taking the time to honestly assess your thoughts, actions, and intentions.
So it's like checking in with yourself, asking, how did I show up today? What can I learn from this? What can I do differently tomorrow?
Exactly. And Dr. Larijani adds that it's not just about being accountable to yourself. It's about recognizing that we're accountable to the divine, too.
Oh, wow. That our actions have consequences, not just for ourselves, but for everyone and everything around us.
Precisely. It's like that Rumi quote, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop."
Our actions, no matter how small, they ripple out and affect the whole.
Beautifully put. And when we realize that, it inspires us to act with intention, to make choices that reflect our deepest values, to honor that interconnectedness.
So dik and muhasaba, they're like two sides of the same coin, remembering the divine and then reflecting on how we're living out that remembrance.
Exactly. And as we cultivate these practices, as we deepen our understanding, something incredible starts to happen.
Okay, what happens? Tell me.
Well, we begin to see the world through a different lens. The illusions start to fall away. We start to perceive the divine presence in everything, everywhere. It's like a shift in consciousness, an awakening to a deeper reality.
So it's like moving from feeling separate to recognizing our inherent unity with the divine.
Exactly. And that brings us to two more of Rumi's key concepts, Fana and Baka.
Fana and Baka. I've always been fascinated by those ideas. They seem so mysterious.
Well, Fana refers to the annihilation of the ego. It's about dissolving that sense of separation from the divine.
So it's like letting go of the idea that we're separate individuals and merging into that ocean of divine consciousness.
Yes. It's like a death, in a way.
A death? That sounds intense.
Well, it is a death of the ego, of the small, limited self. It's a surrender to something much vaster, much more profound. But it's not something to be afraid of. In fact, it's a gateway to true liberation.
Wow. Okay, so if Fana is this ego death, what about Baka? What happens after that?
Baka is what comes after the annihilation of the ego. It's the state of abiding in the divine presence, of living from that place of unity and interconnectedness.
So we die to the small self and we're reborn into this new way of being, a way of being that's rooted in that connection to the divine.
That's a beautiful way to describe it. And this process of Fana and Baka, it's not a one-time event. It's an ongoing journey, a continuous unfolding of our connection.
This is all starting to make so much sense. The last covenant, the practices of dhikr and wasaba, the concepts of Fana and Baka. So like we're putting together a map for the soul's journey back to its source.
And that journey isn't always easy, right? Rumi reminds us that there will be challenges, doubts, moments of despair. The ego will try to pull us back into separation and illusion. But it's also a journey of incredible beauty, of deep joy and love, of discovering our true nature as radiant beings connected to the very heart of existence.
It sounds like it's definitely worth it, even with all the ups and downs.
Absolutely. And Rumi, with his wisdom and poetry, is the perfect guide for this journey. He reassures us that we're not alone, that the divine presence is always with us, and that the path to unity is always open.
This has been so insightful. We've covered so much, from the idea of Dehliz to the last covenant, from dhikr and muhasaba to Fana and Baka. It's like we're piecing together a puzzle, and this incredible, beautiful vision of the spiritual path is emerging.
And we're really just getting started. There's so much more to discover in Rumi's teachings, so much wisdom and beauty to experience.
I'm definitely ready to dive in even deeper. But before we do, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. If Fana is about the annihilation of the ego, about dissolving that sense of separation, what are some of the things that we cling to in our lives that prevent us from fully experiencing that unity? What are the attachments, the beliefs, the fears that keep us from truly surrendering?
That is a powerful question to reflect on, because ultimately Rumi's teachings aren't just about understanding these concepts intellectually. It's about letting go, surrendering to the flow, and embracing the fullness of our being. And that takes both courage and compassion.
That's so true. And speaking of compassion, it strikes me how much Rumi talks about love. It's like love is the driving force behind everything.
You're right. You know, love really is at the very heart of Rumi's teachings. He talks about it as this like all-consuming fire, this force that burns away all the, the impurities, the attachments, the things that hold us back.
Yeah. I remember Dr. Larijani describing it as this refining fire, like the kind that burns away all the dross so only the pure gold is left. But I mean, that has to be pretty intense, right?
Oh, it can be. This kind of love, this divine love, it's not always gentle and soft. It can really shatter our illusions, break down our defenses. It can push us to grow in ways we never imagined.
Almost sounds scary.
It can feel overwhelming, for sure. But the rewards are incredible. Like Dr. Larijani explained, surrendering to that divine love brings this sense of intoxication.
Intoxication?
Yeah, like a blissful drunkenness. It's like being swept away by this powerful current, this feeling of unity and bliss that you can't even describe.
Wow. I mean, it's hard to even imagine. But that kind of experience, it's not just for mystics and saints, is it? Can, like anyone access that love?
Absolutely. Rumi believed that this love is available to everyone who is willing to open their heart and surrender to it. It's about letting go of the ego's grip and allowing ourselves to be, consumed by that fire.
Surrender. That word, it sounds so simple, but it's so hard to actually do it.
Right. What does surrender even look like in real life?
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's about trusting in something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
Letting go of that need to control everything. Allowing ourselves to be guided by, I don't know, like a wisdom beyond our own understanding.
It's both terrifying and exciting at the same time. Like a free fall.
It is. And in that surrender, in that letting go, we discover real freedom.
Not just freedom to do whatever we want, but freedom to, like, become who we really are.
That's it. To live from a place of love, compassion, deep connection. And this brings us back to, Rumi's emphasis on the present moment.
Right, right.
We can only really experience that love, that connection, that freedom in the here and now. Like Dr. Dinani said, simply being present, savoring each breath, each experience. It's a form of purification in itself.
Yeah, I get that. When I'm really present, I notice that I'm not weighed down by worries about the past or anxieties about the future. It's like a weight lifts. I can experience the world with this, like, openness.
It's like stepping out of the whirlwind and into that stillness at the center of the storm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in that stillness, we can hear, I don't know, the whispers of our soul, that guidance, the wisdom that's always been there.
And Rumi's poetry captures that so beautifully, His words are like a guide, leading us back to our true selves, to that place of love and connection.
It's so inspiring because he doesn't just give us these beautiful metaphors and images. He also gives us, like, practical steps, things we can actually do.
Oh, absolutely. Dr. Dinani talks about this concept called taskiya.
Taskiya.
It's about purifying the soul, refining our character, aligning ourselves with the divine will. It's active inner work.
So we're not just passively receiving wisdom, we're actively shaping ourselves.
Exactly. It's like we're tending a garden within ourselves, right? Weeding out negativity, making space for growth and beauty. And like a gardener, we need tools,
Okay.
Rumi gives us a whole toolbox of practices and principles that can help us on that journey.
This has been such a rich and inspiring exploration of Rumi. We've journeyed through so much of his wisdom, from the idea of Dehliz to the Last Covenant, from Dik and Muhasaba to Fana and Baka. It's like we're weaving together a tapestry of understanding, a map for the soul. What stands out to you most from all of this?
For me, it's that reminder that these aren't just abstract ideas. They're tools we can use. Tools for navigating life's challenges, for finding inner peace, for creating a more compassionate world.
I love that. And thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Rumi. May his teachings inspire you to live with greater intention, compassion, and love.
And may we all find the courage to surrender to that divine flow, to embrace the present moment, and to live a life that reflects the beauty and wonder of our true nature.